I'll catch Joey.
We're going to do some work with small groups later, so it'd be great if you had just right at the table. All right, my name is Chris Lynch. I'll call this meeting to order. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we do some intros. This is a posted open meeting, so we are following Iowa open meeting laws. It's important to tell you that because we will be recording this session, and that'll be a public record, all right? Just like people to know that, so there'll be minutes, all that good stuff. It's also why it's fine all the board members are here. I think most of us are trying to attend many events we can. So just want to let you know that. In terms of intros, board members that are here, Chris Libby's right here, Phil Hemingway, Tasha Deloche. Is that it so far? I think Paul's coming. I think Lori and Brian had constraints, so again, everybody's trying. Everybody's going to make it to every meeting. In terms of administrators, we got Steve in the back, Amy Kodemeyer. Amy is basically associate superintendent, basically runs the elementary schools, so it's great to have her here. And then Kim Colvin is our recording secretary. Anybody else that I missed? Got a couple principals in the crowd. Representing, well, you're not representing Garner. Nick from Garner. No, Joe's here from Wood. Walking. There's the warrior right there. All right. In terms of process, if you've joined us before for some of these, we're going to follow a pretty standard agenda. I'll do a quick overview focused on the facilities master plan. We'll have some small group activity or discussions. If you joined us before, we'll spend 10, 15 minutes at your table talk about what we're going to talk about from facilities master plan standpoint. We'll report out, we'll ask your table to give us 1 or 2 or 3 of your top thoughts. And then if there's time, we will talk the bond. Now I know at Kirkwood there was interest in talking the bond. I would suggest we probably get on top of that. But we'll kind of gauge our time to make sure we can try to get to that. But the primary intent in setting these up was to talk the facilities master plan. All right, quick questions on the process. Very exciting. Always like to start, and there's Joe right there. So we're just doing intros. Always like to start talking about the facilities master plan and reminding everybody the objective. And that's all about transforming the learning environment. And of course, we want it to be student-centered, flexible. But it's absolutely something we need to get done for our students and for our staff. And again, it's really educationally focused on delivering a 21st century learning environment. If you recall, in 2013, we went through a year-long process. It was the most extensive community engagement we'd ever done. There was a huge facilities master plan committee. Over 1,000 people participated from December of 12 to December of 13. In fact, we had over 400 people at one meeting. So, Cedar Rapids is doing some of the similar things right now. They're happy to get a couple hundred people or a few meetings. We had like over 400 people at one meeting. It was a huge event. Now, anybody want to offer, who knows some improvements that have happened already, facilities master plan?
Well, my school got a new gym and a new art room and dedicated art music rooms.
So has Twain been transformed?
Twain, yeah, as well as improvements to what had been just a combined cafeteria. We had used one room for the cafeteria and for the gym. That's now just the cafeteria. We've got some lighting improvements and various improvements to the school. But basically having dedicated art and music rooms in the second and kindergarten classroom has been tremendous.
Man, that's a detailed review. Perfect. How's it been?
It's been great.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been really good.
And that's what we're looking for. So.
I volunteer at Lucas, and they're totally disrupting half the school, keeping half the school in portables, classrooms, and then they're going to reverse. And so all the kids get to stay at Lucas School.
You looking forward to air conditioning next year?
I'm sure they are.
Gets a little hot in Lucas, I know that. It's great having all the light come in, but a lot of you can carry.
We had a sixth classroom addition added to City High, which opened last year. We're in the middle of a very significant rewiring thing for our computer network.
You know, there's a lot of debate over the course of time, could we put six classrooms on the third floor there, and, you know, yes, no, and we got her done, right, so it's been great. And it blends right in with city, doesn't it?
Would not even know.
You have no idea, it's just beautiful. Any other improvements?
We have a school. We have Alexander.
Yeah, Alexander, absolutely. And Alexander was huge for this whole area, right? So it was great if you were going to Alexander, it was great if you're going to Wood. Because if you remember, we used to have like portables surrounding the whole school here. It was like a big moat of portables, temporaries. We had tons of kids with temporaries. So Alexander's been awesome. And Wood's greatly benefit from that too. All right, perfect.
Is it the high school on Liberty?
Yep, it's coming. It's coming. Liberty High. Great opportunity for all of our high school students, whether you go to City or West or Liberty. We're basically going to increase the opportunities for our high school kids by 50% and get our schools back into capacity. So both our high schools are like a 130 index for capacity. They weren't built for what we're doing, and we're going to get them all back in capacity, so that's exciting. All right, I'm going to go through a few, and I won't hit the ones we already talked about, but I think it's awesome that people already know what's going on, and we're already seeing the transformation, all right? I just suggest if you really want to get an understanding of what's happening, talk to somebody at Twain, talk to somebody at Penn, talk to somebody at Alexander, at the high schools where we've had improvement, and they can tell you about what's already happened. But air conditioning, so, and I'll talk about why this came out very important a little later, but we're making historic progress on air conditioning. In 2013, we started our elementary schools, we're 77% air conditioned. We're already at 90%. As you can see, we're doing Lucas right now. We'll be up to 92 with Lucas done. And then the next three schools on the docket are Longfellow, Lincoln, and Mann. So by 2019, we'll have 100% of our elementary space air conditioned. We talked about Alexander New School. The only thing I'll add is, you know, we hadn't built an elementary school on the east side of the Iowa River since 1970, and we're about to build 2 in 2 years. We've been delivering neighborhood schools and really meeting the needs of our students and families in this area. In addition, similar to what Eric talked about at Twain, we added an addition at Twain, added a library gym. It's just been outstanding. I'd highly recommend getting up to Penn. We already talked Twain, addition at Van Allen, City High with the 6 classrooms. Hills had a bunch of improvements done around the entire school. Coralville Central didn't mention that. But same deal, did a basically complete renovation. So what was described at Lucas, we took half the school out of commission half the year, took the other half out the other half of the year, completely renovated the school, and added air conditioning. If you're ever on the upper floors in any of these older buildings, Coralville Central, unbelievably hot. You don't need an early out for it to be unbelievably hot. And just a great to be able to deliver air conditioning and HVAC to Coralville Central. Perfect. Lucas Elementary, we're doing that right now, and of course we're building Hoover on the east side of Iowa City, which will deliver a neighborhood school. I'm trying to go barely. Weber right now, just like Lucas, Weber's undergoing a complete renovation, adding a number of classrooms to support the capacity on the west side, adding a gymnasium. They have about one of the smallest gyms you've ever seen in the district. I call it a utility room, but it is a gym right now. And then West High, we have a number of improvements. Already done the tennis courts. If you haven't seen the tennis courts over there, they're actually a safety issue. We had conferences that were refusing to do tournaments there. We had teams refusing to play if we didn't get these things fixed. Tried to fix them over a number of years. It was beyond the life of the asset, and finally got that done. Plus, we needed to move it because of some of the expansions that are happening out west. Number of mechanical and infrastructure improvements happening to set up the future for air conditioning. Liberty, if you haven't been up on Dubuque between Coralville heading into North Liberty, Liberty High is coming across, or is way ahead of schedule. It'll be well on time and in schedule there. And of course, we'll open up with 1,000 student capacity, and we'll expand it to 1,500 over time. But again, very exciting for all our high school students, whether you're going to City, West, or Liberty. Just improves the opportunity for everyone there. Very excited about Longfellow. Of course, one thing that's historic and different about this plan is, and you've seen this already, is the commitment to renovating our older facilities. while we're also building new facilities. And when you get into a Longfellow, of course, you're talking about a building over 100 years old. So this is our first real historic renovation. If you haven't seen the plans, they are amazing. But we'll do a complete renovation, gym, music, art room, media center, and I think you'll be amazed how modern the school will be while maintaining the historic nature of the building. So very exciting there. Next up will be Lincoln. Again, pretty much total renovation. HVAC, we already talked that. Man will be our next historic renovation. Of course, Man is basically the same building as Longfellow. So it'll be very similar type of improvements we'll be making a look at Man. And then Grant Elementary will be the next new elementary on the north end of the district. City High Phase 2, we need to add some more classrooms, get in the cafeteria and library, a bunch of HVAC improvements, and then some athletic improvements. Junior high, I'll show you this in a minute, the secondary plan, but junior high is a huge Southeast Junior High is a huge opportunity to finish HVAC, add some classroom space for the number of kids there, and then a number of improvements across the board. West High Phase 2 will get into finishing HVAC and just a number of improvements across the school. Liberty Phase 2 will bring outdoor athletics to Liberty. We're trying to get that done sooner than later. And then there's still more, all right? So the completed projects would show up here. These are what we have in process. I talked a number of the future projects, but if we didn't talk your school, there's a bunch more improvements. And again, over 10 years, this is what's historic, but over 10 years, we're gonna touch every building. All right, by the end, we've expected to transform the learning environment across the entire district. That's why it's historic. It's not business as usual. It's a different pace. It's a different commitment. And that's what, the community asked us to do in 2013, and that's basically what we're delivering. All right, if you know the facilities master plan, annually we do an update. Really, about every 2 years, we've done kind of bigger updates. In 2015, we did a bigger update. This year, we're doing a bigger update because we're going to be talking the GO bond. But as part of this year, we always get community input. But this year, we use Thought Exchange. All right, it's our online tool. Hopefully, you've utilized it. If not, I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to do that. What's cool about this tool is it's just easy. It's easy and it's accessible. So we basically asked for input in October and November. We had basically 1,700 people already participate, so thanks for filling up the room here tonight. But just so you know, we've already had 1,700 people input. We had like 20, 30 at Kirkwood, Kim, in that range. But we didn't want to just do an electronic form. We wanted to come out and talk for people that may not have accessibility to those tools. But also, we just know as you get closer, we'd have more data as we got closer to the end here. So, just want to quickly share the data. We asked 3 questions. I'm going to ask your table these 3 questions again. What are some of the ways we can continue to improve the facilities master plan? If you want to share any stories, we kind of did that a little bit already. But if you have any stories you want to share, what improvements already done? Or what are some of the questions or the things we should consider moving forward with the plan? So most tables at Kirkwood focused on question 1 and 2, but we'll ask you that tonight. I will share what came out of the Thought Exchange, and if there was only one, if you know me, I like the top 3, I like the 1, 2, 3, just give me the top. If there was only one thing that came out of Thought Exchange, it was like HVAC, get HVAC done. What I mean by that was it was the theme across everything. It was the number 1. And then everything else was kind of like down here. All right, so the number 1 theme was get the HVAC done. Then you started to see, after that, we got into classroom input, got into, address overcrowding class size, you got into neighborhood schools. So HVAC was by far number 1, support our neighborhood schools, support class size, support what's required in the classroom. Just to close on secondary schools, again, elementary by 2019 will be 100%. I know the font's a little small. Basically, at the junior high level, our big opportunity is Southeast Junior High. All right, I already talked about that. But basically, by 2019, we can have all of our junior highs completely HVAC'd. And then our goal is to have all our high schools by 2021. City still has some work, West still has some work, and Trek still has some work. We're recommending accelerating the Trek plan to complete all the high schools by 21. So if you had to, keep it simple, easy to remember, 2019, all the elementaries, junior highs done, 2021, all the high schools done. Questions on all that?
I keep hearing the term HVAC. I'm not sure what that means.
Air conditioning, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. They're kind of interchangeable. I mean, it would include heating and whatever. But generally, people are more concerned about the air conditioning side. The other benefit I just say with our HVAC, we've done a lot of geothermal across the district. It allows us to basically be more energy efficient. We've definitely seen reduced operating costs as we roll the improvements forward. All right. Yep.
So I appreciate all the positives, all the pros. Would be helpful for me to hear where are the barriers to implementing the plan as you, as the board, envision?
Well, the biggest barrier is probably money. And that's where to talk that next. But I think that's the single biggest barrier. I mean, so from we're on time, we're on schedule, we're approaching 4 years in, and in the next presentation, I'm going to talk about the money, because it would be the biggest constraint. If I haven't answered your question after the next section, let's revisit that, because it's a great question. But we're at the show me the money stage. We got to either put up or decide on the plan. All right.
Is the district, I heard, but I haven't been able to confirm it, is the district committing to expanding preschool? And if so, where are those kids going to go? You're already busting at the seams.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. And, again, scope is something we talk every year. We're going to talk a lot more about pre-K. I think as we add rooms, you're never short rooms, whether it's programming or pre-K or whatever. And the other thing we know is when we started the facilities master plan, we had two schools worth of kids, 2 elementary schools worth of kids in portables and temporaries. Now this plan gets us back to basically 100% capacity.
But in Alexander, you already have, Alexander's the new school, and it already has a temporary, and you had to use the common areas classrooms. That school was undersized by the time it was done. And the new Hoover Elementary is going to be exactly the same size as the existing Hoover.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not going to be any expanded room there.
Well, again, this is why we can do annual updates. So what happened at Alexander this year? We reduced the class size. Made a policy change, a significant policy change. Made a significant policy change to reduce the class size at Alexander. That meant we had to utilize every single bit of space. So it was a 500, capacity. We had this debate all the time. What's capacity mean? Well, how many kids are you going to put in the rooms? So it's a 500 capacity school at our average class size. But when you reduce the class size, then we need more space. We are integrating that thinking back into the future design, some of the future classrooms. You see some of the scope that administration has recommended they're adding classrooms. We've also gotten smarter about things like, if you're going to add a couple rooms, if Dwayne was here, he could talk about this. What we'll add is art and music rooms.
Well, if you're going to reduce class size, then wouldn't it make sense to keep every existing building and not tear down any existing schools, especially schools that already have HVAC, like, I don't know, the existing Hoover?
Yeah, except that, and that would be a huge discussion unto itself. So, I mean, when you start talking Hoover, the biggest constraint, if we want to talk money, the constraint is the general fund. And so affordability to, run the schools and have lower classroom size. And I'd be happy to talk all night about Hoover and general fund, but you're now getting over into the operational side of things. And affordability is a key question. Now, I'll tell you on size of schools, this is another key concept. Some districts in Iowa have decided they're just going to build 700-kid elementary schools, 700, 800. I think we've chosen evolution versus revolution is the way I call it. At the start of the facilities master plan, the size of our schools were 350. By the end, it's going to be 450. We're still supporting our neighborhood schools. A number of them are getting bigger. But the general fund absolutely requires that because we just can't afford to stay where we're at from a school size. Now, we're committed to maintain our neighborhood schools to the degree we can, but the general fund's a huge constraint, so. Yep.
Was that the Airbnb? There was a decision to reopen the facilities master plan and had to do with the free and reduced lunch thing about busing kids, and where is that? What's the status of that? Alexander and
You mean we opened the facility master?
it was about whether or not, because the current plan, as I understand it, we did the last one, the current plan had us busing kids.
All boundaries?
Yeah, right.
All boundaries are completed. So
They are completed.
there's, yes, because, high schools are opening next year, so for 2017, secondary boundaries have been decided. There's a master plan on 2019 elementary boundaries. We could dive in, where we're on that.
So I guess my question is, was the decision made to try to bus kids around to address the concerns about the disproportionate number of free and reduced lunch students at certain schools?
There's like 20 different criteria we take into consideration inside of boundaries, and all that was to make a decision. We can talk that separately. Now,
Has it changed since May?
when do we decide? Fine. No. We got it? Yeah. All right, so for your table, I hope you picked a good table. Look around. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. These two questions, here's what I want to do. We're going to take 10, 15 minutes. Probably,
Okay.
like I say, Kirkwood decided to focus on 1 and 3, but ways to improve the facilities master plan, anything you want to input as we move forward. Now, if you think the track-wise stuff is right on and want to move on, we can spend short a little longer. But please take at least 10 minutes and we'll talk about it.
No, that's okay. I can hold it.
So I guess I'd like to see okay, so I guess so is this so
as we move forward. This plan.
want to revisit principal. Unless there's
Yeah, I think it's 17. I thought it was That's what happened at Shimmick. We went from 35 to 36 and it was 2 sections.
So I think that's I guess
It doesn't,
So then some of these,
I think they're all. I think just looking at questions. For me, I'm agreeing as a board member. Stories are always important, right? About how they but having something to go back to process that you're always saying to go back to that's helpful me. This is not about me. I'm here listening. I'm just saying, like, I think they are equally important. They all tell a story about I'm ready for me.
here's Clovis. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I'm just trying to sense if everybody's close. Oh, we're going to.
I'm just on my first discussion, 7:15, 7:30. I don't think we haven't really answered. We didn't answer two, so we haven't really answered. Maybe to
All right, we're going to target 7:15, so 7 more minutes. 7:15.
And so then that was frustrating me. They were spending more money for 5 more classes. 10 years. That's true.
But again, that among
But you know what I mean? Like, can I see what you're going to speak about just to make sure that it's
middle of our catch up. We're having 40, 50 years out. Like even our facilities folks are saying in 20 years we're not going to replace a lot of all these smart workers. Exactly. So it's like, how do we catch up? Catching them up, and then the same time we're catching them. And then in the midst of that, we have how many elections. It's like we're trying to lock it down, and then you come in and vote and throw it all out. That's the hard part. Trying to get continuity will be helpful. But they have such a the life of in our district, I as a person on a lot of school board, the life cycle school board members, I was thinking here, like it's like it's 4 years. Yeah, in other places people be there 12 years. So they're making the seniors really comfortable. But most people are so drastic.
Yeah, I think
You want to meet everybody.
All right, if each table could pick a fearless leader. Pick a fearless leader to report out. How's that in the back? Better? And it's really up to you in terms of what you want to report out on. So we'll name this table lucky table number 1. Who wants to report out? Oh, 2 tables. All right.
So our table discussed what we can do to facilitate the Mann's expansion. We think that's very important. And we have concerns about the bond being broken down and that it might not pass because people who bought into it initially with the facilities master plan might feel left out. And what would be left out? You know, who would make that decision? And anything else in Edwards update? Oh, Southeast Junior High. Southeast Junior High is in need of more common space in the kitchen to facilitate its ever-growing overpopulation, so that the kids can basically eat lunch, and they don't have to bring their lunch for fear that they won't either get food or B, have time to eat it.
Great. Perfect, great review. Table number 2.
Yeah. I feel like one of my students, I did not volunteer. Our end of the table was just concerned about the Hoover School, not as the Hoover School per se, but the Hoover School as a metaphor for our neighborhood schools, and what we perceive to be a lack of transparency and communication about how that decision was made, and we're now just being told the decision was made, it's over, and we still don't really understand if it was the right decision, and it sends a broader message about how these decisions are being made and how they're being communicated. So it's a concern about the neighborhood schools.
Great, thanks. Table number 2. Number 3.
So we focus mainly on things that would happen after the bond. So we didn't go into the detail about what it would take for that bond to pass, but mainly looking at what are the projects that are left on the table, and how could we make sure that they actually fit the needs. So one of the things was to make sure that we get updated on the enrollment, and so that there is still a need for a specific addition if the enrollment is still very strong, or maybe reducing the size of an addition based on enrollment. The other thing looking at it was there is a lot of electives that are designed in terms of projects in that second part, and there's also some schools that unfortunately will not get the major facelift or renovation or critical need. And so instead of doing things by school, maybe that things could be done based on needs versus elective. So that would be the main thing.
Great, thanks, number 3. Is this table number 4?
You were all together in our discussion, but so we talked about making sure as we go forward in our master plan to make sure that we're paying attention to the growing special education population, which is increasing, and making sure that the facilities are equipped to provide them with the best learning environment possible, as well as the English language learning. And I think for me as an Alexander parent, you know, we look at our school and we love our school, it's beautiful, but I think there is that we love having the smaller class sizes, but it's like we don't fit anymore, and maybe if we thought ahead, this is the population that's coming to our school, maybe this would have been better with different arrangement of class sizes, which is kind of hard to see in the future, but you know, as much as we can. Also thinking ahead with technology, that the schools need to be adaptable to meeting the growing technology in the future. And we talked about how those of us who have already been blessed by this great facilities master plan to have our schools improved need to keep in mind that as we go forward, keep in mind that some schools haven't had their improvement yet, and we still need to be gung-ho for supporting them to have those same improvements that we've already gotten. And we need to support that bond even if our school's been done, somebody else's school hasn't been updated yet. So, and all in the same light, to keep in mind, like, my kids in elementary school, but I need to not just think of elementary school, I need to think of the high school students, middle school students, and making sure that those, that I'm, as a voter, as a community member, promoting all the kids' learning opportunities. Oh, and also just working on, so like there was some discussion about how these schools hadn't been updated for so long that that's why we're having to do so much now, why it's so expensive now. So as we're moving forward to like set into place plans so that it can be gradual over the years from here on out after we get through this part of the plan.
Right on. Well, the first 4 tables are pretty good, so high expectations for the last 3. Who's the fearless leader? All right, table number 5.
Okay, one thing that we also talked about was the concerns about splitting the bond, so I won't go into that as well. Everyone's touched on that. There's quite a few horse fan people here, so we talked about how it feels like everybody from the school, everybody's supportive of that project succeeding, but maybe caught up on smaller details or whatever, and just want to be sure that everyone's communicating, and there's a lot of creative solutions for the space there and how we can make that an urban school that functions. And we don't want those kinds of issues to jeopardize that project. To that effect, also we talked about how we don't think that all of the schools, the opportunities for the students should be equal at all those schools, but the schools don't need to be cookie cutters. And if one doesn't have a gym that's as big as the rest of them, that it doesn't result in somehow the school getting closed or something. So I also talked about concerns about overall capacity and as related to closing small schools, especially because those schools don't return once they're closed, and instead they move out to the outskirts of town, it seems like. So we also talked about, as a self-declared eco-friendly, sustainable community, what it means when we put these schools out as pioneering development out in the countryside. Does that actually support making the kind of city that we want to live in? Because where the schools go is where the development happens.
Great, thanks, number 5. Number 6.
We have a few different notes here, just kind of, we lumped all the questions together. We talked about not breathing the old schools as the new buildings come online, so keeping in mind those older schools. We thought that the Garner Elementary addition is probably not necessary if the new elementary school is built on the property near South Slope, which would then delay the current grant location near Liberty High School from being built. So kind of changing that order there and getting rid of the addition at Garner. There's a number of concerns talking about junior high capacity, especially at North Central. An addition needed to be there that would make it comparable to the other junior high schools and have that move up on the timeline. And then there's just questions about the need for extra space at junior highs and some discussion about the possibility in the future of a fourth junior high. And then also there's concerns just generally about how accessibility and where that should be placed, and that should be higher on the priority list. So there we go.
All right, thanks for volunteering to give money back. That's awesome. So that's a great segue. So any questions or any comments after hearing everybody? There's a few common themes, Jim.
Yeah, what happens if the bond fails?
Oh, you guys are good. Thanks for the segue. So what are the constraints or barriers, and what happens if the bond fails? Any questions on what we've read so far? Because I'm going to go into the bond conversation. All right, GeoBond, great question. So you noticed on the, I know these are on the table, right? You noticed that the projects over here in blue, future projects subject to bond approval. And if you get into the details, this is basically the cash flow analysis. So when you look at those projects in blue, they're all up here, and there's basically cash flow analysis. And this is where you'll hear a couple numbers, okay? Maybe you've heard 191 million, or maybe you've heard 194 million. They're basically the same number, all right? And I'll just tell you the difference. So the 191 million is basically the cost of the projects. But it costs you money to go bond and do this and that. So when you get to those 191, to get those projects done, we'd have to go bond for 194 million, all right? So if you hear two numbers, that's just what's going on, all right? Some people also just round up to 200. So if you've heard like three numbers, they're all the same, it's just the way people are talking about them, all right? And then there would be 5 bond series, so we'd sell the first bond series in December of 17, next one in June of 18, and so on. So there's basically 5 series. And you can see they're color-coded. So basically when we're borrowing the money for which project. All right, that's pretty key because it's the cash flow between now and fiscal year 23-24, how we get the whole plan done. So this is basically the same thing in a summary, right? I just said there's 5 issuances of bonds. There's the dates I was talking about, and this is basically the money. Now all of a sudden you see that 191 million add up to 194 million, again just rounding it off. And that's how we get the projects in blue done. Now when you do a geo bond, of course you're committing to basically increase property tax to pay off the cost of the bond over time. The good news is we currently have our spend rate on paying off past bonds is 54 cents per thousand. So when I talk tax rate, I'm always going to talk $1 per thousand, all right? The good news is that borrowing is coming basically due in 17-18. So if we do nothing, if we did no geo bonds, by the end of 17-18, at 54 cents would go to 0. So it's a good time for us to borrow, that's another way to say it. If Craig was here, he'd tell you, our Chief Financial Officer, we're authorized by law to go up to $4.05. And there's some districts in Iowa that have gone that high. Now you'll find it's a full spectrum from 0 to 4.05. But if we were to go all in with the bond, borrow 194 million, basically the impact on the tax rate would be go up to the $2.16. It's basically $1.62, $1.68 higher than today. All right. Now here's where it gets a little interesting. Of course, back in 2013. We knew that SAVE had been approved and we could utilize that. SAVE's the penny tax, right? So if anybody doesn't know, in 2007 we authorized the penny tax, so 1% of all of our sales tax goes into a fund, gets redistributed in Iowa. For us it's a big deal, like $13 million a year, big deal, okay? So it's a big deal. It's been what's enabled us to make historic performance. Well, perhaps you've heard it's authorized to 2029. Sounds like a long ways away, right? But when you start getting a long-range planning, it's only 13 years away, and then you start to get into your borrowing power of how we could borrow and do bonds and all that good stuff. It's starting to impact us now on our ability to borrow if we want to move forward. So it's interesting, if SAVE got extended, we could do all of the remaining projects without a bond. If we really want to. Might not be a good idea. You may want to do a little geo bond and some safe tax, because you don't want to mortgage too much in the future. And just for example, I mean, if you look at 2029, if they extended that 20 years, you're potentially opening up like $500 million, like $400 to $500 million of opportunity. All right. So that's just an interesting fun fact. Now the Iowa legislature, who knows what they're going to do, right? Good luck in figuring that out. But interesting enough, there's been bipartisan alignment to extend SAVE, but what's complicated it? Anybody know? Water quality, right. So they're also debating how to fund water quality. I think if you found, and again, this is opinion, if we solve the water quality funding, then SAVE would probably move forward and get done, because there has been bipartisan alignment to do that. But you never know, right? Politics is politics. So the question we've been debating is, should we go for the full bond as initially planned, or should we go something in the mid-range? And again, the mid-range would be to keep the plan moving forward on the current timeline with the current scope, but perhaps you fund part of it now, and then basically see if SAVE is extended. Yep.
So could you do the bond as is, as planned, and then if SAVE is extended, use SAVE to pay down the bond?
Yes, so the way we wrote our revenue purpose statement, so Kathy said this exactly. So if we go bond 194 million, and then the day after SAVE gets extended, we can still go borrow that money and we can use SAVE to pay it down.
Well,
and that
you're assuming they're not going to require another RPS fund.
It's possible. So politics is politics. You may need to reissue the RPS revenue purpose statement. But if you pass the revenue purpose statement like we have it today, you can pay down debt. All right, now when you look at the tax rate, and this gets into another interesting question, why not just go for it? Let's go all in and do it. We are very lucky as a district that we have a high value district and a relatively low tax rate. So a lot of numbers up here, but let me help you. These are the top 10 districts in Iowa in terms of size. All right. This is basically saying our tax rate of the top 10, we're 10th. Okay. If you do any of the top, we're the lowest. If you do the top 25, we're 23rd. The other thing I find interesting about this chart is check out the rates. We're the lowest, but look where number 9 is. We're like $1 lower than number 9. Right? We're $13.98 here, $14.77. You see some pretty high numbers. So, from an affordability standpoint, from a tax rate standpoint, we are not really leveraging the power of the geo bond. And even if we did all in and went to like the full $2, you're still only half of the legal allowable limit. I mean, so that would be a motivator to try to get the whole thing done. But a tax increase is a tax increase, and some people are going to have different points of view on that. If you look at our recent history as a district, we've been as high in 10-11. We were as high as 1469. I basically just showed you we're a little under $13. So it wasn't that long ago we were 70, 75 cents higher. So can we afford it? Well, that's up there we decide, right? Probably. Maybe
Can you go
we're.
back to the other slide?
Huh?
Can you go back to the other slide?
Yep. That one?
What's the last column? I can't. No, far right.
That's basically the property valuation per pupil. So that's why we're a big number. One of the reasons our tax rate is lower is our property valuation per student is higher. So we're a high valuation district.
Correct. We're significantly higher than everybody else.
Yep.
If I see it right.
That's right.
So when you're talking about affording it, we're talking dollars rather than just percentage of the charge, right?
Absolutely. That's why I'm very careful to say everybody's going to have a different point of view on flat versus 5 cents versus, everybody's going to have a different point of view on the tax rate. And it's versus today, right? So, I mean, it's easy to say we're low. It's easy to say we're not using the full value. But if you're going up $1.68, it's still, okay, well, what's that cost me? There's lots of people with, big houses, small houses, whatever. It's still out of pocket money versus today, right? which is why I wanted to chat some of this today, so. And you're gonna get the full spectrum, right? I've heard from the no people that there's no way in hell they'll vote for anything, period. And I've heard from the yes people that I don't care what the button is, I'm gonna go yes. And then, you know, the question is in the middle, you know.
I think I'd be afraid to frame it as we can afford it. You know, I think, you know, if that's going to be framed that to the public, I think it would be, for some people, very hard to stomach hearing it.
Yep.
From a standpoint of, you know, because they're not looking at that rate, they're looking at what they're paying.
Absolutely.
The dollar. So
Yeah, you look at how much you paid for the total car, you look at your car payment.
Exactly.
A lot of people look at the car payment.
So,
Yeah, and again, I was just trying to frame a number of points of view. I don't even, you know, affordability, people need to decide for themselves, absolutely.
Correct.
Yep.
I just talking about framing it for trying to pass it on.
Don't worry, just pass it. Is that, yeah.
Right.
Chris, are you going to get into like speaking about some of these projects, or should I ask a question about now?
Go for it now.
So I guess my question is, who decides what project is a need that goes first? So I'm looking at some of these. It looks like North Central, if they need a 240 pupil type addition, like why they're so low on the line? Why, if we were supposed to close Roosevelt because we didn't have money to repair it and it wasn't fit for students, now we're going to spend 4.2 on it. I'm just confused at like how we decided on the order of these, so to speak. It seems like there's some that like are desperately in need.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So in 2013, so I'll go back to 2013, and we revisit this every year, and like I said, we've done bigger changes every year. The original order was number one based on educational adequacy. All right, so we started with that. So we did an assessment of all our schools, and you know, where are they at, what needs to be done. All right, we started with that, but you can't do all the big projects all at once, right? Because the next two constraints are cash flow. So we don't have the money to do it all at once. And then the next constraint is we don't have the organizational capability to handle all the projects at once. So they had to get spread. But I would tell you that it started with educational adequacy, then it got into cash flow, and then it got into organizational capability. There was sensitivity to making sure also, I don't think this was a driver, but there was a sensitivity to making sure we had some geographical equity, that everybody felt like they were seeing improvement. Now you blend those all together and let the debate begin. So you could have a capacity argument at North Central, but does that go before air conditioning at Southeast? Or does it go before any of the other, you know, projects? And then you could say, well, you know, should elementary go before secondary? And so it was trying to balance it all. And you could debate any single one of them. But that's how the order was set.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious. I mean, because we were supposed to close Roosevelt and then close Hoover, but we closed both of those, and well, we're supposed to close Roosevelt, and instead we're spending $20 million on the new school, and we closed two. So I think that's the thing that makes me nervous is like the order of things that are being done, and like things are changing. I don't know. I know that you can't like guarantee like X, Y, Z will go based on like how the neighborhoods change and the needs change, but I guess it just makes me super nervous that we spent $20 million on a new school and we're closing two essentially.
Well, there's a couple reasons. So some of the schools, if you take it at Roosevelt, basically the cost to renovate the school was like over half or 2/3, somewhere over half at least to
More
build a
than
new school.
4.2 million?
Oh yeah, yeah. Probably north of, well, if we're using today's numbers, see again, numbers change over time with inflation, right? But at the time it was over half to build a new school. And then the question is, are we happy with the location and are you happy with the facility? And there's a number of questions that need to go into play there. I wasn't around then. I'm aware of the debate.
So it costs less to
Build
build a
new.
new school than to renovate.
Well, again, it depends, but when you start, it's a question, it's a key question. When you start getting, and this is just usually when you get into over half the cost to do a rebuild or renovation, you really wonder about, should I do it? Now, we are doing it. Man and Longfellow are great examples of, no, we're committed to that location, we're committed to the neighborhood, we're doing it. So you can't just say there's one answer. I'm just trying to provide historical perspective on Roosevelt now. So there was the cost of facility, it's on a hill, it's a multi-level facility. Sorry, thanks, Chris. There's lots of considerations at the time. none of these things are simple. So if it was simple, it would be easy, right? So.
I just think, you know, just off the top of my head, it looks like my property taxes are gonna double, with this bond. And I have to wonder, you know, it sounds like this master plan has obviously been discussed for a long time, many years, but it sounds like we've almost promised everything to everyone. And it makes me nervous when we're saying, you know, every school deserves, you know, attention, which is true, but like, wow, like, this is so big, so much at once that I really think people are gonna have trouble when they realize that property taxes are double.
Well, double is ridiculous. Okay, I just want to confront that right there. There's no way you can ever do any math to double it. So we can talk after on the math, but can there be an increase? Yeah, and we could talk about it. Depends on your valuation and all that, but I don't disagree. So that's why we're talking about, you know, should we do a smaller bond that, you know, basically funds, and I actually made the recommendation on the smaller bond. Now, here's the deal. I'm one of the people that's going to vote yes no matter what we do. If we put the whole thing up, I'm voting yes. If we put half it up, I'm voting yes. I looked at this from a purely cash flow standpoint. And if you know, I'm an operations supply chain manager by background, so I kind of back up and go, what do we need to do by when? When I looked at this, we need to fund the projects that require cash flow specifically for construction over the next couple of years. And when you look at that, if you look at these first two bond series, the stuff in basically yellow and blue, we need the cash flow in the next 2 years to start construction. You got to have it. You could still, in my proposal, come back in 2 years and do another GO bond if you wanted to. Or if, say, it gets extended, you can do it. Now, my premise, again, this is what we're debating. I'm assuming the whole plan's still going to happen. I'm committed to the total scope. There's no, to me, it's not picking the projects. In my mind, they're all going to happen. It's just a question of how you pay for it, how you fund it. So do you GO bond basically fully funding the next 6 years? Or do you do a partial GO bond funding the next 2 to 4 years? That's the question.
Can I just chime in with one other thing that goes along with that, which is, we've been having a little back and forth today about, well, if this bond gets to 60% that it needs to pass, does that legally oblige us then to go and do all those projects? And the latest thing I'm hearing is that it does, but that's not even what I want to get into. And I guess we got to remember that, for example, we got a 100-seat addition on Borlaug in the very last year of the plan. I want to say last year of the plan. Yeah. And so it's important to kind of pin that down, because you could 6 years from now get to that project and say, if you look at the enrollment, you might say, well, we no longer need the 100-seat addition. You know, the renovations, the air conditioning, those problems aren't going to go away. But one of the things that gives me a little bit of pause about the big, the full Monty putting it on the ballot is, what if we get to year 5 and it turns out we don't need those additions anymore? Are we now legally committed to build those additions? Whereas if you do it in a smaller portion, you have less of a worry about that. Something to take into account.
Jim?
Can you point out that the property tax that we currently are paying now is actually going to go away and we're going to be at zero? If, let's say the GO bond doesn't happen and we vote no for it, compared to what AP is paying right now, which is $4. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I touched on it, but just to Jen's point here, this 54 cents, if we do nothing and don't GO bond, our tax rate will go down 54 cents. Because we already are at some level using that borrowing power. And again, that debt basically expires in the fiscal year 17-18 stamp time frame. So we could go borrow about $40 million, a little more than that, I think it was 46, but I'm a round numbers guy, $46 million, and keep the tax rate flat. Again, the challenge is 46 million, then you got to start, that wouldn't fully fund the next 2 years, and you'd have to stop doing projects.
I just want to point out that it's going away.
Yeah, exactly, it's going away. So I didn't fully answer the question. Okay, so what if the GO bond fails? I tell people, I like simple answers, I'm a simple guy. You can basically assume a full stop. Now here's the reality, there's like 8 projects here going at once. Maybe one of them can go. But there's not going to be this whole, they're happening in parallel, it's all happening at record speed. It's going to be one go, maybe two go. But I would assume just simple, it's pretty much a full stop. Maybe pick one. And then, you know, welcome World War III on which one project's going to go forward. That'll be fun.
So given the part of the bond, how would you ensure that people across the district would vote for it? So right now everyone has skin in the game, but you know, why would North Liberty vote for Leeson on the east side? Or, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, sometimes you're good, sometimes you're lucky. So I'll just tell you the way I looked at this was very objective, and I just looked at the cash. I didn't even look at the projects. I just looked at the cash initially, and then I looked at the projects. And guess what? The smaller bond is actually in the same percentage as the total plan. So if you look at the spending, it's the smaller bond will be very close to the. And here's the deal. I'll just give you the numbers, and these are approximate. I took out like track and Tate, some of the things that support the whole district. But of the spending, it's about 40% in the north, 38% in the east, 22% in the west. So why is that? Well, look, we're building a new high school, right? It's once in 50-year event. So obviously we're spending a little more in the north. We're spending a little more in the east because we got old schools. It's pretty simple. And then the west, if you're feeling bad about the west, I'm a west parent. You know, West got a little lucky in that we built Forlog just before the facilities master plan. We expanded and renovated Horn just before the plan. You know what I mean? So it depends what time frame you looked over, but I would say again, the point is at the end, 10-year map, the outcome is the same.
Right,
Equitable
but for a shorter bond, everything would be balanced along the way that everybody would have an incentive to vote for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, so if you just look at what's in here, let's talk actual. So north, we've got Grant Elementary and Liberty Phase 2. Pretty compelling. On the east side, you've got Southeast Man, Lincoln. And if you're a West High parent, you got West High Phase 2. Now you may decide that's compelling for you, you may decide it's not compelling for you. What I can tell you is when you look at the spend, it's very similar to the percentage of the whole project. Now, and again, there was some sensitivity to geographical equity, and if you look at it, and so here's another way to think about it. The first third, the middle third, and the last third are all pretty geographically equitable. I'll tell you, the first third spends a little more in the north, again, because of the high school. The back third spends a little more in the east, older schools, but the middle is pretty much average. It's a great question, but now again, that's, you know, people talk about this, that's the con, right? There's not as many projects in there, maybe it doesn't impact as many people, but you got East, West, and Liberty all in there. So you automatically impact everybody. And then I think you got some pretty compelling elementary schools that it's, I mean, again, we just heard from 1,700 people that said HVAC's the number one thing. Well, you got Man, Lincoln, you know, obviously Gardner in there, Southeast. Some of the city work helps support it, you know, air conditioning. So now I still think the back third, the other argument is, well, maybe the back third won't be as compelling. Well, I can tell you, the back third has, you know, City, West, you know, Liberty. It's got some pretty compelling elementary stories. And again, at some point we just have to say, if we're committed to the total plan, somebody said it earlier very well, if my school gets done early, I should feel compelled to vote yes so everybody else gets the same benefit. Or especially if you're an elementary parent, tremendous benefit at the junior high and high school level. By the way, my last is a senior, so I'm just going to miss all this stuff. So, and I'm still voting yes, you know what I mean? So, yep.
Is there any kind of PR type campaign?
Oh yeah, great question. So, I mean, what we need to, so the question was there any PR campaign? That's going to kick up big time in February. In fact, what we need to decide now is, and you know, why do we need to decide this now? There's basically a glide path of legal stuff we need to do and whatever. So in January, we need to decide how big the bond is. And then really February to September, let the campaign begin. And we'll be looking for volunteers and leaders across the district. Thanks for coming.
I have a hard time with you know, I appreciate your comment about keeping it simple and like we prefer but I think this is a pretty complicated beast that's being presented. So I don't think there is a simple answer. And I would strongly encourage you to consider some maybe fairly complicated, questions in terms of how to move forward and, the size of the line and what is actually palatable. I have a hard time with that's a big apple you're trying to get people to eat, and I have a hard time.
That's the question. So I'll give you two options. We could do the table thing again for about 10 minutes and report out, or we've actually had a pretty good discussion, so I'm going to leave it up to you. Do you want to talk it as your table and report back out, or do you feel like we've talked the bond and you understand, at least for tonight? So my last comment, we joked about this at Kirkwood's issue club. No pressure on the school board, but by January 31st, we got to decide how big the bond is. All right. I know you wish you were a school board member now. You can sign up for next year. You can run in September, but the 7 of us have to decide by January 31st. We're going to meet on the 24th. We got this meeting here on Thursday. We're at the Borlaug. On the 24th, we'll have a meeting. It's on both the school board agenda and the work session, probably the work session for the bigger part of it. And then we're planning a meeting for the 31st.
So are these projects set in stone, or will you guys look at updated enrollment numbers and stuff to see if we need to tailor some of the questions?
Well, again, what you need to remember, so the answer is yes, and the administration's done that. They've presented us with an updated recommendation. And the reality is, annually, we will continue to check. And now we get an enrollment report, like the full demographics, every 2 years, and we'll need to continue to do that. And, we've said this many times, the outlook is great for the next few years, and then, once you get beyond 5 to 10 years, it's a good swag, but it's not a great. You really want to wait till it gets closer in, which is why we're doing the annual review. So here's what I'd leave you with. On the bond, I think the real answer is there's no right answer. We're going to decide, might be smaller, might be the whole thing. No right answer. If you support the facilities master plan, if you support transforming the learning environment, whatever the bond is, we need to get behind it. Get behind it 100% and then get on with the marketing campaign. We've got time to do that, but we need to get on with it for September. And if it happens, then we keep rolling. If it doesn't, then we can do a full stop. All right, I want to thank everybody. You guys were awesome. The first section was awesome. Thank you for your input. Thank you for participating. I know we'll be around if you have other questions. So thank you very much and have a good night.
Free job for the evening.